Hi everyone, welcome back to the voice tip video series with the Cantor Coach. This week we are going to talk a little bit more about consonants and the role they play both when we sing on our own and with a group. Let's get started. Okay, so when we are pronouncing our words when we're singing, we really want to make the vowel the focal point of the word. And the consonants are just as important, but in a different way. We want to frame up the word with the vowel being the focal point and the consonants shaping that word. So let's talk about consonants a little bit. So when we are thinking about consonants, we want to be thinking about our Ks, our Ds, our Ts, and our S's and R's. We'll talk about R in just a little bit here, but we want to make sure that we are pronouncing those very crisply and very clearly at the ends of the different words. For example, if you had the word God in a piece of music, it can be really easy to forget to add that D at the very end of the phrase, especially if you're holding out the note. But in that case, it sounds like ga rather than adding that D at the end to make it a very clear word. To practice this, I recommend over-enunciating our consonants and speaking the text so that you can really clearly pronounce those vowels. It may sound a little overdone when you're speaking through it, but when you sing it, it really sounds crisp and clear. So take your music, take a look at that, sound out those words, have those vowels be that center point of those words, and really clearly pronounce those consonants. Something to be mindful of with consonants is making sure that our consonants themselves do not start on the downbeat of the measure. Now, what do I mean by this? So when we are starting, whether you're with a group or as a soloist, sometimes if our consonants start right on that downbeat, it can appear to the listener that we're coming in a little bit late on the beat, when really we're just starting that word just a hair slower than what we probably should. So what I recommend doing is starting your consonant maybe a millisecond before that downbeat so that it sounds like the word is hitting the downbeat right on it. So for example, if you have an ST, let's say you have the word star, you would want to count to yourself as you're practicing and start the ST part of it just slightly before the downbeat of the measure. Take your music, take a look at that. I highly encourage you to practice your entrances, whether they're at the beginning of the piece or even just each measure, practicing your entrances or new sentences in the piece of music. And that will help you to stay together, especially if you are singing all together as a group. So we've talked about consonants at the beginning of a phrase or at the beginning of a sentence and the beginning of a word, but what about at the ends of the words? So we talked about how it's important to have those consonants very crisp and clear, but when we are singing all together as a group, it's really important for us to all cut off at the same time. So if you don't do that, you can hear a bunch of S's or the T's or D's, and they start sounding like a ripple effect, like s or d d d d when you're finishing that phrase. So make sure that you're watching your music director or your conductor wherever you are singing so that you all cut off at the same time. This isn't too much of a tricky thing for a soloist, but it is still very important that you watch your music director to know when you're coming in and cutting off. And finally, we want to make sure that we are not lingering on our consonants. If we linger on the consonant too long, it can be unvoiced or it can cause our sound to sound a little bit smaller than we're intending and not as full and rounded. So make sure we're just tapping those consonants both at the beginning and the ends of the word to round out that vowel and round out that word, but not lingering on them for too long. And an example of this is with the consonant R. We want to make sure that we are not pronouncing it as when we are singing and really pronouncing the vowel that precedes it and the vowel that is after it as well. So, for example, we'll look at the word earth. This one can be a little bit tricky, but what I tend to do is go more towards an vowel, and then I just lightly tap the R at the end. So rather than singing earth, that's a little bit more chewed down on the sound. We want earth. It gives it a little bit rounder of a sound, and the vowel can shift depending on what sound quality that you want to achieve with that, but I tend to err more towards an sound, or it could be a morphed one between an and an depending on what best suits you and what best suits what your music director is going for. But regardless, I highly recommend not holding on to that R sound. Leave me a comment down below if you have any other questions about consonants. I'd love to answer them for you. Thank you guys so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you all next week. God bless you.